most normal people at that dinner didn't drink the whole glass because they knew another glass was coming. Welcome to the Far More Podcast. Hey, Liz.
Hey, Jason.
Hey, Liz.
You know, I like to change it up. It keeps our listeners on their toes.
You are wild and crazy, girl.
Wild and crazy.
Oh, man. What you thinking for today?
Well, so...
Wait, hang on. You did that little smile. You do this smile when you're like, I got something for you. Like, you curl up your yeah, so...
That would be the definition of a smile.
Yes.
Curling up both sides of your mouth.
It's like a smirky smile is what I was trying to say.
It's sneaky.
It's maybe
I have that
a sneaky, smirky smile. So what is behind your sneaky, smirky smile today?
First of all, I have no idea what you're talking about. Second of all, so there was a woman on TikTok. She was talking about, I think she's calling it, I don't know. She had some fun like hashtag. She gave up alcohol for November. Is that a thing? Giving up alcohol for November?
For November? I've heard of dry January. I've seen of sober October.
Maybe
and
that's
dry
what
January.
she said. Maybe she said sober October.
Okay.
Because that sounds real cute and catchy. Or she said dry November. I don't know. Anyway, it made me think about you and your decision to give up alcohol. And I don't know that we have necessarily, obviously we've talked about it because we're married and we talk about just about everything. But I have some questions and you agreed that it would be okay possibly to share this part of your journey.
Well, I've made that decision at least 5 times. It's one of those
things.
things.
Wait, which decision? The one to not
to go
drink
sober.
Or the one to share the journey?
I'm still unsure.
Or wait, have you even made the decision that you can share it?
I don't know that I made that decision, but here we are.
Okay, well,
with
don't
your
worry.
Sneaky, smirky smile.
We're not live, so it's fine. So I think my first question is, when was it? Will you remind me? Like what time of year? I think it was cold.
Well, no, I think it's which time. I think the word journey is really important here.
Okay.
Because I think I've not had any alcohol over the last 2 years.
Okay.
Right? A little over 2 years.
So I guess that's what I'm thinking of.
You're talking about when I made the final decision. I made the decision.
There was more than one.
Oh, I've made like 5 different decisions of doing this. Like,
Did I know this?
This is maybe not completely. So you may learn some new things here.
Coming at you live. All right.
This is a decision that I think that God and I have been wrestling with for about 10 years.
Okay.
About 10 years.
Okay.
And
this is news to me.
Yeah, there's God has been whispering for me for about 10 years, hey, this might be a thing in your life that you should lay down. But I was always like, why? I don't think I really have a problem here. So I didn't understand it. Okay. But then I would go on like sober journeys or sabbaticals. I'd be like, okay, I'll go 6 months, no drinking. I'd go 9 months, no drinking.
Okay, so let me ask a real quick question before I forget.
Yeah.
So you were confused. I just want to make sure I do understand this part. You were like confused about the whisper because in your mind, you're like, well, this isn't a struggle. I'm not struggling with this thing. So why would you be asking me to lay this down? Is that?
Yes. And then I would prove to myself and probably to God that I don't have a problem. I would go sober for
months,
6 months,
on end,
for 9 months, and go like, see,
there's no problem
here. But then of course, the point in which you break that sabbatical, I hammer down because I'm an all or none kind of person.
Yeah.
And so then I would have a moment where I'm like, ooh, you had too much there. Not good.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, okay, maybe this is why. And then I would prove to myself again, oh, this isn't a problem.
Okay.
And it was an interesting cycle. And I think when I don't think I fully understand that it was God really working in my life. A lot of times I would be like, just as this is a willpower test, I would convince myself this is a willpower test, or
that it was really just you,
or you're going to do this for health reasons, or insert worldly things here versus me and God
spiritual
wrestling with this as we do. But I remember an interesting moment in 2019.
So that's 4 years ago now.
4 years ago. It was after I took a trip to Montgomery, Alabama.
Okay.
on really a journey to learn more about just the history of civil rights, slavery, things like that. And it was a really heavy trip. And I was about to get on the interstate after that trip, and I was like, God, what am I supposed to do with this heavy new topic you've presented with me? What do you want me to do with this? Mm-hmm. And as clear as day, God said, you won't even do the simple thing I've asked you to do.
Oh, talk about a record scratch.
And I knew exactly what he meant. That's the thing.
Oh, did it
and I'm like,
did it cut you deep in your
like,
soul?
Okay, you really are telling me to lay this thing down.
Oh.
Now.
Wait, whoa.
Right. Now do your math. Do some math on that. That was 2019.
Uh-huh.
We're in 2023.
Uh-huh.
I said I finally made the final decision in
2 years ago.
2 years ago in 2021. So really, well, think about what happened between 2019 and
the
2021.
The pandemic.
Right. I actually, from that moment in 2019 to April 2020, was completely dry. And then a moment happened, April 2020, and just completely unlocked that again. So
you were so stubborn. I mean, I am too.
Yes.
Listen,
Yes.
I am too. I understand it. Not
Yes.
maybe the same category, but
no,
I get it.
I don't know if you remember this, but I actually, what I did is said, okay, I'm not gonna have bourbon anymore. I put that down, and that's when I picked up, like, that's when all the cool seltzers were coming out, like the hard seltzers, right? And so I got into the cool.
They boomed onto the market.
Yeah, the cool seltzer thing. I'm like, oh, this isn't as hardcore as me just
cool?
drinking. This is what I convinced myself of: is it's summertime's coming. This is the new cool thing. It's not like I'm drinking a bourbon on the rocks, so it's not as bad. Like, I didn't start putting.
You justified it.
I justified it because I'm really good at that.
Yeah.
And so
see previous episodes. Pretty much every single episode, I think.
Yeah, and so really from that point in 2020 to, I guess, really the end of July 2021.
See, I knew it was cold.
I was still kind of wrestling with this. God, really? That's really what I was like. I knew I was called to let it go.
That just made me think that this isn't like surrender. It's just another area of giving up that independence. And
this one was worse because I was proving that I had it under control to myself and God. And so there wasn't a clear why. Right? And so without there being a clear why,
it makes it even deeper.
It made it even deeper and harder for me. And there's a lot of conversation about alcohol, and especially in Christian circles. My belief system, okay, is that clearly drunkenness is a sin.
I agree with that.
My belief system is not that alcohol is inherently bad or having a drink is necessarily a sin. There's a lot of nuance in this conversation.
A whole lot, yeah.
I say that coming from a place that someone that is now choosing sobriety, but what I know is it's a sin for me to drink.
Right.
Because God
made that clear to you.
God has clearly called me to a life of not consuming alcohol. So if I drink, it is a sin. It doesn't mean that if you drink, it's a sin.
Right.
That's where I'm at right now. I don't know. I may mature in my thinking on that, but that's where I'm at. I think God clearly calls us uniquely. And when we don't do what God's called us to do, it could be a sin for me and not for you.
Right. And vice versa.
Correct.
Yeah.
So wrestle with that for a year of, really, God, are we sure? Is this the thing? Yes, no. Until finally I was like, okay, I'm laying this down.
So why do you think, is it just because you had convinced yourself, and I think it's cute that you said that you were trying to convince God too. Do you think it's because you didn't really think there was a problem there? I don't know. I'm trying to figure out why it took so long. Is it just because you didn't think that there was a problem there? Or was it more of like a, I'm not going to give this thing up?
I don't know if it was from a pouty. I think it was like, this is going to be a major inconvenience in my life.
Okay, say more. Why?
Right?
Why is it an inconvenience?
In so much of what we do, whether it's event related, job related events, personal events, like alcohol has just become a normalized thing.
It's just part of the gig.
It's part of it. And so it will make you look weird. You're now in these situations where you're the weird one.
Okay.
Wait a second. You don't drink. Why? Oh, you don't drink, so you must have a problem. Like it becomes
you
like
stand
sobriety
out.
Becomes a stigma too.
Yeah.
Right? And I think part of that was
That's so weird.
Right. I don't want an
You didn't want an audience around you.
Yeah, because this was something I was still processing, right? And so people, early when I gave up alcohol, the conversation was like, oh, you don't drink? And I would, you know what I'd talk about?
What?
I would talk about health-related things. At that time, I was also training for a 50K. So I could also turn it into, well, I'm training right now. This is all health-related. No, in the back of my mind, this isn't health-related. Me and God are fighting on this thing. And so I was able to have normalize the conversation to make it not feel weird. Oh, well, he's training for a 50K.
Okay.
He's doing it for health reasons. That makes sense.
But as someone who does not shy away from hard, awkward, uncomfortable conversations, I'm really surprised by this information. Is it because you didn't want to stand out? Because usually you welcome that lively debate and that type of dialogue. So was it a pride thing? Was it like, why didn't you want to have the real conversation about it?
I think because I was still mad about it that I was surrendering it, right? And so
okay.
at first I was still like, really, God, really? I'm going to lay this thing down. It wasn't a big deal. Now it puts me in awkward situations. Now it's a conversation point. Now this, now that. And you know, I'm being 2 years removed from it. It's like the immaturity of that is laughable.
Yeah.
But that's where I was.
In that moment.
I was still stomping my feet maybe.
Yeah.
A little bit of this is silly. But honestly, the more I've been removed from that initial decision and 2 years down the road, I am just seeing how much alcohol has become especially for men, such an escapism, such a ritual in their lives. And I'm not talking about the extremes. There's the extremes of alcohol has destroyed families and relationships and people.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There is a pandemic of alcoholism in a lot of cases.
Yes.
But there's also just how it's used just to numb and medicate so much and
to escape.
Right. The level of escapism.
Right.
Or it's needed to even function in an event. I think for me, the dependency aspect was, okay, if I'm going to be in this social setting with these couple hundred people, I'm going to need a drink in my hand
to calm you down and to relax you.
And relax me and to carry on whatever. My problem is, again, I'm all or none, where it's easy where one turns into two and two can turn into too many.
Yeah.
Like I think that can just happen, and it can happen so fast if you're not careful.
So you decided, so you decided a few times, but then according to you, you don't really make the decision until the action follows the decision.
Well, God decided for me. I finally came along.
You surrendered.
I finally surrendered.
Do you remember the first, let's just call it the first 3 months after that surrender? Were you still salty about it? Or because you had finally surrendered, did you come to peace with it? And you were like, okay.
No, because again, I was in training mode, so I was okay then. I didn't come in peace. I remember the 6 months after I'd made the decision was my first real, I'll call it stumble. Is there was a moment I was at a dinner, and it was a wine pairing dinner.
Where you get a certain kind of wine with a certain kind of entree.
Girl, come at me with a Cabernet. Love it. Yeah, so I was at this wine pairing. And I definitely didn't want to be the weirdo. And so I was like, okay, this one instance, it'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
I endorsed an exception on this day. Okay.
There's a moratorium.
Right. Okay. Like this will be fine. It's a one-time thing. Look, you've been on this journey.
You've done so good.
Good. Like you convince yourself. Like okay, so here's a timeout. I'm good. Okay. Well, I had 6 glasses of wine on that dinner.
Did you?
I did.
I think I'm finding this out for the first time as well.
Because they brought a glass with every.
You had 6 courses?
That's right.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
Now, here's the worst part of the story.
Oh no, we're not to the worst part yet.
Like, most normal people at that dinner didn't drink the whole glass because they knew another glass was coming. But not your boy. Your boy was like, oh, I'm on spring break with this thing. So I'm like, I'm going to enjoy this. And so it was the day after that where I'm like, you don't get a day off on this. You don't get a day off on this.
And how did that make you feel? Were you angry? You can be honest. It's just us.
No. I think that was the moment that I actually wasn't no longer white knuckling it. It was like, yep.
This is it.
You don't get a sip. You don't get a drink. You don't get a.
Have you noticed a difference in your life because of that surrender? Or what have you noticed in your life because of that? Because of letting go and surrendering?
Oof. I think what has helped there is showing me that I can surrender and let go of something that may feel like I'm going to miss out, or may feel like a punishment, or may feel like an etc. But understanding it is ultimately for my good. It's led to a more openness for me to surrender things. So even though I'm on my journey of trying to, how do I actually fully give control of my life to the Lord, it has been a great example that I can always go back to trust Him. See this thing that you thought was stupid and small and that you had it under control and it was insignificant, and you've let Him lead you here. See how much better you feel. See how much is added to conversations you had because of it. And so I think for me, it's now just more openness to surrender bigger things, quote, bigger things, than there was before.
So that I love that. So you mentioned early on in this journey of becoming, for lack of a better phrase, becoming sober, deciding to give up alcohol. When someone would ask you about it, you would sort of deflect, or you would redirect. Well, it's because I'm training for this thing, or it's a health reason. What has your answer changed now? Do you actually have that real conversation if somebody asks you?
Well, it honestly, it doesn't come up as much anymore. In the early stages, people know you as someone that drinks alcohol. So once you get past that,
the noise kind of quiets down.
It quiets down. And so I don't have awkward conversations anymore, honestly.
Well, what if somebody did ask you though?
The question is, can you use it to have an intentional conversation?
Yeah.
I cherry pick on when I actually have the intentional conversation there. It depends.
Does it depend on who it is?
It depends on the audience and the situation. There's moments where I'm like, okay, I can leverage this to say, here's an area where I actually listen to God. Now, it took me years and years and years, and I'm like trial 5 of actually doing it. And so sometimes that's really good conversation. There's other moments that are like, do you drink? And I'm no, and it's end of conversation.
Is it the end of the conversation because they don't ask you the next question, or because you don't facilitate it? You're just kind of like, no, and that's it.
Well, I mean, it's rarely I have just a no period conversation.
Well, that's true.
But no, it's usually just no next question. Now, I think there's interesting just consumer behavior trends where sobriety, mocktails, etc., are starting to ramp up, and
like non-alcoholic beverages.
Yeah, I mean that's what's been,
but that taste like.
That's what's been fascinating for me, even in the last 6 months, is finding a non-alcoholic whiskey or a non-alcoholic IPA that has that flavor profile that you like still, without all the byproducts.
I was going to say the added benefits, but that's not right, because it's not. Well, actually,
but that's how it's viewed.
It is.
That's how it's viewed.
It is. It's
right?
a slippery slope, because I do know that it does knock back a little bit of anxiety, and it does sort of calm you down. But like you said, taken to the extreme.
one turns into two, and two turns into too many.
So if someone, and I'm really putting you on the spot on this one.
Oh boy, goody.
Feel free. We can cut this out if we need to. So if someone out there is sort of wrestling with the same thing, they're like, I feel like the Lord's whispering this thing to me, but they're in your same position. They're like, it's not, they're being introspective, and they're saying, but this isn't an issue. This isn't a problem. Why in the world would you want me to give this thing up? How would you guide them if they approached you? How would you guide them?
I think it's going to depend on if they have a relationship with Jesus or not. If they do, I would say, listen, what I've realized so much is it's actually not about the alcohol. It's about, are you willing to surrender to God? And
obedience.
It's obedience. Insert thing here. Alcohol can be substituted with anything else. Are you willing to do what you believe God's calling you to do? Like that's first and foremost. So if you're a Jesus follower, it's that conversation. If you're not, it is a little different. It's a there's a bit of how are you using alcohol, like because there's a lot of men that just, it's part of their routine coming home from work to take the edge off, to transition to family. It creates also a lot of loneliness too. As much as people think of alcohol as a social thing,
or even like something to comfort them,
it can be a lonely thing too. So I would just really unpack more of what's going on in someone's life to have that conversation.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I really appreciate you being willing to have a conversation about this. I know it's probably not super comfortable, but I also know that there are people who are wrestling with God on giving things up. I do. You do. We all wrestle. And even people who aren't following Jesus, even people who don't know him, they're probably wrestling with things as well. Like, I really feel like someone inside of me is telling me to give this thing up, but I just don't want to, and I think we could all learn a lesson or two from you today in that.
Well, it's easy for us to write it off as, oh, that's a silly thing to give up. It's insignificant. And I go back to, it's not about the thing. It's about, what is God calling you to do? Because you don't know why. Right. You don't know why. You don't know what conversations could happen because of that. Right. And I think that's where, going back to your other point, is I'm now more open to conversations around this, and more open to, it's not an alcohol conversation in a lot of cases. It's a, what's going on in your life conversation as a man. Why do you feel like you need
this thing,
the medication? Why do you feel like, why is this needed? Why is this the only thing that brings you joy? Why can you only be in a social setting if you have this? Let's have the next level conversation. So I'm always open to those. And it's again, not always easy to be the only one without a drink in your hand in a social setting.
No, it's not. Maybe we can find a solution to that one day. Who knows? Well, I appreciate you. I love you. And we love you. We are so glad that you're here. Everybody, our listeners and those who are watching. I think if you or someone you know is struggling with alcohol, obviously there are resources out there, and I will put some of those in the show notes, and you can reach out to somebody. I feel like we live in a world, in a time where it is actually becoming easier to reach out and ask for help without fear of having to go to an office and sit down in front of somebody and be so super uncomfortable. There are some very less, threatening, or, well, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, practically it's easy to reach out. Emotionally, it's still hard. So I'd say, if you need somebody to come with you in that, reach out to us. We'll be those people for you. Because a lot of times you just need somebody to go with you, or to encourage you, or to hold you accountable, right? Not the
just
one
to be
that's
a friend,
right?
Just to be a friend,
just to be a friend, and so we're always here for that.
Yeah, but I will put some links in the show notes if that's an avenue that you want to explore. And we are grateful for you. Thank you for listening and tuning in. We are on all socials, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok. I'm missing one. Instagram. Far More Podcast. And good job.
Love you.
Love you. We'll see you next time.